The Variety Artist, Episode 2. This one's all about SEO and your website. And make sure to visit my Facebook page at The Variety Artist, where you can ask me to ask questions of our guests. Get involved. Now, let's start the show.
These are tried and true methods.
You helped them out, get them on like first page of Google.
Google wants relevant page searches.
Welcome to The Variety Artist, providing aspiring artists and entertainers with in-depth discussions from top performers from all over the world. So get ready to book some gigs, make some money, and have some fun with your host, John Abrams.
Our guest today is the founder of One World Rhythm, an awesome and spontaneous music-making experience. He has over 17 years of practical hands-on experience from corporate boardrooms, city classrooms, nursery schools, parks and recs programs, senior centers, and countless library events. He's the founder of the Black Knights Drum Corps and founding board member of the Southern California Percussion Alliance. He's a REMO-endorsed drum circle facilitator, board member of Cadabra SoCal Celebrity Legends Chapter, and the creator of Show Operations, the ultimate contact and booking system for entertainment professionals. Dean Hankey, who is the Dean of Success, calls Pete the bomb diggity rock star stud. The smartest entertainer I know, variety artist, I give you Pete Ellison.
Well, thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
This will be fun. Now, I went over a lot of the business stuff that you do. Tell me a little bit about your personal life. What do you do there?
What do I do in my personal life?
Sure.
All right. Well, I like long walks on the beach. Just kidding. I feel like we're on a dating match or something. No, I enjoy, really, I enjoy playing music. So that's my passion, and I'm really happy that I've been able to move my career into that column because it didn't used to be that way.
Well, now a lot of people say it's impossible to make a living doing music. How have you done that?
Right. My parents were the very people that said that, and it's unfortunate that they went that way with me when I was in high school, because had I followed really what I wanted to do to begin with, I probably would have had a different course in my life.
When I started this animal magic thing, my dad said, don't quit your day job.
Yeah, that's it. And I think most parents, had the whole starving artist mentality, not really knowing that you could do things in an entrepreneurial way. And it wasn't in their generation to think that way. That's
it. Now tell me about One World. Well, what exactly does you do? All sorts of different events. What does that look like?
When I left the corporate world in 2004, I decided I wanted to really get into my passion of doing music, and in particular doing group music making. But there really is no book on that. There were some things that I later found that could help me kind of move things around, but in those early days, I was really trying to figure out what and how One World Rhythm would operate. Everything from ground zero. So we do events, as you know, like things like libraries and school assemblies and private events and that type of thing, but we issue instruments out to everyone in the crowd. We do a series of activities.
What do you mean by instruments? I mean, are you giving everybody violins, or what are you doing?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, they're all percussion based. Some of them are tuned melodically. Other instruments are more traditional type of drums and whatnot. Some of the stuff we use in most of the large group settings, we use a drum called a sound shape, which kind of looks like a pancake, and you hold it in one hand and you hit it with a mallet in another hand. That works out pretty well because we can then bring lots of drums to a particular event and not have storage issues and space issues.
So if I have a group of 200 or 300 kids, how do you work that out?
200 or 300 kids are all getting drums. and they're all getting sticks, and they're all getting our melodic instruments as well. So in all, an event that may have 200 or 300 kids actually has closer to about 600 to 900 pieces of equipment that's being dispersed.
And how do you control that with 200 or 300 kids doing that?
This is where kind of the mindset ninja techniques were developed over time. We really spent a great deal of time in testing and R&D to determine at what levels what age levels at a particular group of individuals can go before things start to go off the rails. And we got it down literally to a science, so much so that we started to cookie cutter it and offer it to franchisees and retraining to our employees, where we can hand them an MP3 player and they hit the start button and it's a timed show for 45 minutes and it has bumpers that key in throughout the playlist. And basically what's happening is about a minute before we're going to have an instrument change, we start getting some wind chimes that start to play lightly, enough for the facilitator to know you've got 1 minute to wrap up, and then a bumper's going to hit, which acts as a transition point for passing out the next set of instruments.
Gotcha. So your audience gets a number of different instruments?
They get a number of different instruments, right? When we first started out with this concept, we were doing 3 sets of instruments, and we found that we could still have a great experience by reducing one of the sets and just going down to, because we used to use auxiliary instruments, things like shakers and tambourines and all that, and then we would transition into what are called boom whackers. They're plastic tubes that are tuned to the notes on a piano, and then we would transition to drums at the end because they're the loudest of all the instruments.
Do you give different instruments to different groups? Do you divide them by sections, or how does that work out?
In the case with the melodic instruments, we decided we would go with a pentatonic set of instruments. This is using only the white keys on a piano, so that when you're putting them in combination, they're not going to make a clanky sound. They're going to all sound pretty good together. But we break the group into thirds, and in that case, there's a section that's getting a set of red-colored boom whackers, a section for green, a section for purple, and each of the boom whackers are tuned differently. So we might have the E note, the A note, and the C note. We can then construct a series of activities using those pitched instruments.
I see. So you basically conduct a musical piece with your audience. Is that what you were saying?
Right. That's exactly right. And we'll do things that bring the audience members up as well, where they are also conducting the group setting. But the whole concept of One World is it all hinges on the audience's success. So unlike a traditional variety performer where you're polishing your act, sure, and it's all you, and if there's a fail, it's because you did it. In this case, the audience is controlling the show. So it's up to the facilitator to guide them to a positive outcome. And that takes a lot more energy, especially as you start getting into loud instruments that could easily start their own agenda and take the train off the rails.
Gotcha.
So it does take a great deal of mind crafting to get the audience to get the result you're looking for.
Got it.
In some cases we have clients that will say, well, just go ahead and start. Like if we're doing a birthday party, often is the case, the guests are running late, and the host will say, oh, just go ahead and start. And it's like, well, we can't because your guests aren't here.
That's
it's
right.
all about them. It's not about us. We're not a band.
Yeah.
So,
as a magician, I get the same thing sometimes. Go ahead and start when there's no audience. And my particular show has a lot of audience participation.
Right.
So now one thing I've learned over the years, and you probably do the exact same thing, is that sometimes little mistakes do happen during the show. Sometimes kids do funny little things, and it's hilarious to the audience. And then it's our job for the following show to be able to repeat that. Somehow figure out a way to put that little mistake or that little funny moment into the show.
Oh, yeah. In our case, there is lots of improv that's going on. So we have these slices of time that we're conducting a live event with, and it's all playing over the energy of what the crowd is doing or not doing. Yeah, that whole thing is dynamic every time you go out. There's no one show that's the same. We have a structure. We can say, here's how we're going to steer an outcome. But in terms of saying, this is the line, it's not always going to play that way just because of the dynamics of the crowd.
So each show turns out to be a little different.
A little different, kind of like a wild bull ride. Depending on, you just never know what you're going to get, really.
Let's switch gears here. You mentioned something about the corporate world before. What did you do before?
I spent just about 18 years in the IT department, information technology, even before there was such a thing. That used to be just managed by whoever department wanted to have a computer guy run the show back in the day. And then eventually corporations started to say, hey, might be a good idea to put this under one umbrella and let them organize everything. Because back in those early days of the corporate world, you may have had a setting where the marketing department all loved working on Macs, and the HR department was all in PCs, and the engineering department may have worked on a system called the VAX system, that was network-based, internal network-based. So to have an IT department was really born of necessity to try to rope technologies all under one command center and say, no, this is how we're all going to communicate with one another, and have a department to handle that. And I grew up in the rank and file from being a computer operator working on Cray supercomputers and large mainframes. That evolved into taking the technology back out and moving it out to localized PC networks, and then doing troubleshooting. I spent time with email administrator, and that's a whole different thing. It's a whole different career doing.
So all of your background is, or at least in the corporate world, were computers.
Right.
So I just had an interview with Ken Frawley of Dream Shapers, and he was saying that you helped him out, get him on like first page of Google.
Right.
So do you have some good ideas on how an entertainer could get their website onto front page, or, at least creep up the ranks?
Sure. Well, the very first steps are to get your page in order of making a clear message to your audience. That is going to be the number one thing before you even start in SEO. And the reason for that is that it doesn't do any good to work on your SEO or even buy AdWords if the people are going to hit your page and not understand what it is you do, or be turned off by it because it's not giving the correct messaging. That's step one, and it really ties into a huge issue that a lot of people fall into, which is trying to get relevancy on their page. Relevancy is the key. You see, what I mean by that is that if you decide you're going to work on AdWords as a means of driving traffic to your site, if your website doesn't have the relevant keywords that are included in the ad you're running and the campaign, then what's going to happen is Google's going to allow you to do that, but your relevancy score is going to not be correct, and as a result, your click-through costs are going to be higher.
So what you're saying is if for example, I have a Google AdWords that says, magic you'll never forget for the rest of your life, and then my website says I do juggling and I have live animals and doesn't say a lot about magic, then there's a problem there. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. It's rightfully done that way so that people can't hijack keywords.
Gotcha.
Like if you had popular keywords and you were just using them to drive traffic and they're not relevant to your web page, Google's going to say, fine, you could do that, and your click-through rate's probably going to run you about $10 a click.
Oh, fun.
Whereas if you're relevant to it, then that same ad could cost you merely pennies to do.
So the first step would be making sure that your AdWord campaign has the same keywords as at least your homepage, right?
Absolutely. And, I wrote an article on the Performer University site about keyword stuffing, because a lot of, or slamming, I think is what I called it. But basically, throwing all the keywords you ever want to use to have people find you on your homepage is really not a good idea either. Mm-hmm. Just because every word that's on your page is competing for the keyword. Google has no idea to know what is more important of a keyword than what copy is. So
the word the has just as much strength as magician.
Right. Well, now their algorithms are smart enough to figure out words like the, but in terms of some of the other copy that you may be having on your web page, that itself could be an issue if it's competing with your keyword. Now, your keyword needs to be, see, one back in the day, people would say, okay, I'll just put keyword, 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 just over and over and over again. And Google said, no, that is keyword stuffing. That's going to get you banned. Your site's going to go off the charts. You'll never be seen again. And then they said, oh, okay, well, we'll do the same thing, but we'll hide the font in the same color as the background.
So you have a white keyword that says magician or juggler or whatever, and then a white background so nobody sees anything.
Right. And that also will get you in the hot water list, so you can't do that either. But there is things that you can do to help your SEO simply by doing, for example, if you bold your keyword, if you've got your keyword underlined, if you've got an internal link that has your keyword in it, an alt image tag with your keyword in it. These are tried and true methods. A lot of people say, oh, well, social media, it gives you more juice and whatnot. I tend to disagree with that. I go by
Well, wait. Before we get into the social media, let's go back to the bolding and underlining and linking your keywords. So if I have a keyword on one of my pages,
yes,
and I bold it and it says, if one of my keywords is, for example, magician, if I bold it and underline it in the middle of a sentence that says, best magician in Southern California or whatever, then Google is going to look at that particular word that I underlined or bolded or linked.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And you should have at least the keyword showing up bolded. It should be underlined. It should have a reference linked, the keyword in a reference link, either internally or externally, preferably even both.
What does that mean?
When you create a link to another resource,
yes,
then that you can put in a alt text description or a title description on that URL, and the keyword should be in there. It should be in an alt text tag or a title. If you've got a picture, you should use the keyword in the picture. And then all these elements need to balance with copy as well, because it's not just, see, each one of those are going to rank you, give you a point, if you would, that moves the needle up the keyword, oh, this is what he really is all about. And so long as it's put correctly in the context of copy, you'll be fine. Google wants relevant page searches. So
when somebody searches for an entertainer of some type, whether it be juggler or musician or whatever it is,
right.
Google wants to give them the best site for that particular search.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And they don't want to give frivolous sites priority to that. So,
gotcha. Now let's go back real quick to pictures on your site. You're suggesting that when you put a picture on your site, a lot of times when you take a picture with your camera or your phone, it automatically gives it a kind of a random description, like, picture number 579342.
Right.
So you're suggesting that you change that to a keyword instead, a descriptive keyword instead. Is that right?
Absolutely. And you would also put it in as part of the image tag itself. So when you're adding a image, if you're using a what you see is what you get editor, chances are it has a title that can be tagged into it.
And that is what most people do, by the way. I do.
Right. So yeah, that's how you would handle that. You want to make sure that it's in the title description so that when Google's spiders come around and look at your site, they understand that keyword associated with that image.
So matching the ad word to your keywords, putting keywords in throughout your site in regular sentences, bolding them, underlining them, putting keywords into the description of your pictures that you put on your site. Those are 3 or 4 really good SEO tips, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And I'm going to be covering a lot more at the Performer University, but we can get into that later.
Yeah, we absolutely are going to get into that. In the introduction, I mentioned something about show ops, show operations. Tell me about that.
Well, show operations is a customized CRM for a contact management system for entertainers.
Okay.
When I was starting out with our company, One World, I found that I had a lot of my data kind of strewn everywhere. I had some of it was in QuickBooks, some of it was in a program called Act.
I used Act, as a matter of fact.
Right. And as you well know, Act has grown up, and every now and again you get the burn where they say you're no longer supported and you got to buy a whole new thing, and
right.
And it gets really messy trying to get data in and out. So because it was kind of strewn around everywhere, I even had stuff in my phone, contacts and email contacts. It was just kind of everywhere. So show operations was really written from ground zero to help leverage time with technology. So it does a lot of the heavy lifting. You could literally have, instead of having a contact form that right now for many artists, their contact page sends them an email, and that's the end of it. Whereas with show operations, that same form could be loading them into the show operations system, and then show operations could be sending them messages based on the event that they're interested in doing, and then turn on a whole world of things for you as an artist to be able to easily manage, sending out quotes and invoices and all that.
Oh, nice. Quotes and invoices. Now let's start from the beginning. Why is it so important to have a database of all of your customers?
Well, for those old pros that have been working out of a calendar, physical calendar I'm talking about, and I've seen it. The problem with that is that once the data is put on paper, it can't do anything else. And if you bring that data into a database like ShowOps and a cloud-based database, we're covering a couple things. Number one, you never have to worry about your computer crashing and you losing that data ever again.
So with data, you're talking about like name, address, phone number.
Right. All the things that you would normally have written down on paper
of a client.
Is now down in the database. And it's at your fingertips, readily available. So if the client calls you back a year or more later, you could bring up their screen and literally, if you've done your notes correctly, you could talk about how's Johnny, their son, doing with Little League. Is he still involved with it? And then all of a sudden you've created an even greater connection between you and your client, because they're thinking you are this super brilliant guy who's remembered every detail about them, and you're just kind of looking at it on the screen going, how's the dog? And all that.
And in fact, here's a little hint for people listening to this. With show operations or whatever CRM that you use, you can actually create a series of questions like, do you have a dog? How's your family? What kind of foods do you like? So that way, when they do call back a year later, you say, you can send them a pack of M&Ms if that's their favorite food. Or you can say what you're saying about, how's your dog or how's your family, that type of thing. So you can actually create a series of questions. So it's very similar every single client that you have. And you can make that similar note. So you're always looking at that.
That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So once I have their name and address, phone number, and all these different notes, what can I do with it?
Well, you could certainly create quotes and send invoices. The client can actually book themselves, because once you've sent a quote out, if everything looks great and they're looking at it and go, yeah, everything looks great, they hit the book button and bang, it now changes the event, puts it in your calendar, and updates you with an email to let you know it's taken place, that it's now on, it's on your working calendar. And
so they call me to request a quote, I send them a quote, and then they book the show themselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
That is exactly it. There's no better feeling than to be out on the road and then getting a text message that said, XYZ client just upgraded to booked, and now you're set. You know it's on the calendar, ready to go.
And is there a place where they can actually send you money through the invoice or the quote or something?
Absolutely. You can set it up so that by default we support the PayPal gateway, but if you're interested in using Stripe as a payment processor, we also support that. So you can do it either way. And you could set it up where they are paying a deposit, or you could call it a retainer, or whatever you like to call your deposits, because
Sure.
I know some folks don't like using that word. You can call it whatever you like, and you can set whatever percentage you want as a button they can push, or they can pay the full amount. Either way, it's on their invoice when they get that sent to them. Once they are in the system, they can get messages based on whether their event is currently tentative. So you could set up a whole set of messages that are doing follow-ups and repositioning your offer and really getting them educated. We, in our birthday party market, we send about 7 messages that go out, timed, released every few days, and each day we're giving them a little gift to help them with their birthday party, whether they book us or not. It's just making that touch.
So someone calls you and says, well, I'm interested, but I'm not quite sure yet.
Yes.
And so then you hit something on your computer, and then they get 7 messages spaced out every week or every few days or whatever it is, kind of tilting them towards you, using you as their entertainment, right?
Absolutely.
So they first call you and say, well, maybe. Then they get 3 out of the 7 messages. And after the 3rd message, they decide, yeah, oh, this sounds good. Let's book this. Then
Right.
a different series?
Exactly, because you can then you can already have canned all your messaging that's going to take place for a booked event. So once they've gone from tentative, and maybe they're only 3 messages in out of 7, but once they decide to book, then now all those other messages that were designed to get them to convert are now off, and the new set of messages based around their current booked event begin.
Nice.
And that also carries through to the end of their event as well. So you could have messages that are going out. We often will send out automated messages that go out several days before the event. They send a reminder to the artist, and then they also send a reminder to the client. And we close up a loop that sometimes happens. This happens so often, and I'm sure your listeners are going to identify this. You get to a gig and the client says, oh, no, I said we were going to start at 4, not 3.
Right.
So to alleviate that, we send out an automated message 3 days before the gig. And in the message, it's talking to them and saying, hey, could you double check all these details, make sure we're all on the same page, nothing's changed, and could you reply back?
Gotcha.
And we get the client to send us either a thumbs up or down, and we can circumvent that possible train wreck the day of the event.
So they've basically confirmed it for you, the time, the date, and all that kind of jazz.
Right. And so the day of the event, even if it does become a train wreck, you have documentation that says, no, you agreed, you sent me this email saying everything was this. So
right. You've booked the show, you've confirmed the show, then you go and do the show. What are some good ideas for after the show?
Well, after the show, you definitely want to be able to send them a thank you for having you out there. And I believe that thank you should stand alone. You should have the thank you note, and that's it. And praise them for everything they've helped you with, and we hope you've had just this wonderful experience. Then, a week later, send oh, by the way, I was just thinking, I would really appreciate if you could help me by telling me how I did, good, bad, fair, poor, and maybe we could share that with other people.
Gotcha.
And that stands on its own because it's yet another touch point, as they call it in the business. Having that on its own doesn't take away from the thank you. See, everyone's expecting that they're going to get a feedback form the day after. That's right. What they're expecting. They're not expecting you to give a no clause thank you, just to go, hey, just thank you. We always thank them at the event anyway, but it's nice to be able to get that email. And then to have it be a little farther out, not so far that they don't remember, but, a week out, send the note and say, hey, I was just thinking, it would be really cool if you could help me out with this, and I would love to hear your feedback. And then, solicit the feedback at that point, or if you're going to ask them to go through another hoop, like give you a review of some sort, that would be the appropriate time to do it.
Right. Now, here's a strategy that I use that can help people too. Here's what I do. Right after the show, the following day, they get an email saying, thanks a lot for, the show. Thanks for inviting me to your school or whatever the event is. But in that email, they also get a link that they can hit that shows a funny little video of me saying thank you. It's a silly little video. And it says, you will be receiving something in the mail shortly. A week later, they receive something in the mail, a little gift from me thanking them. So now that's 2 points of contact. Not only the 3, actually. They first received the email saying thanks a lot. They click the link. They see a funny video of me. And then they're expecting to receive something in the mail. And they do receive something in the mail from me.
That's great. Yeah, that's great.
It's super fun for them. And it makes it look like you're a fun person to do business with.
And I'll tell you another tip that some people use. They'll log in to their phone the day of the event, and when you're logged in with your phone, you could be at the event site and hit a upload button, and it'll turn your camera on, and you can be having their venue in the background as you're saying, hey, I just had a great time with you. I just want to thank you for everything. You've been amazing. Then hit the send button, and now they've got that in their portal page and sent as an email message that can be sent.
Perfect. What is the portal page? Tell me about that.
Well, portal pages are pages that are unique to the client, and they're unique to the event. In version 4 of ShowOps, we've opened it up so that you could have a customized portal page that has all the documents that your client may need, plus video or a slideshow of the event type. You could change the background. So if you're doing a birthday party event, it might have swirly balloons and streamers and stuff as a background, and showing pictures of the types of birthdays you do or whatever. And then they have the documents that are necessary for that type of event. A birthday party mom is not going to need your W-9. Right. As would a corporate event or a city of function.
So we can do a birthday party with fun balloons and fun-looking portal page. But if we do a corporate event, we can make that page look very corporate and nice and fancy and professional.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And business themed.
Right. And with different documents also.
Different documents, different copy on the page. It's all easily done now, and it's pretty cool to be able to have that flexibility.
And that's sent out right when you book the show, so they have everything right in front of them, right?
Absolutely. So if you need to have them have a room set up or a writer, you could do that.
So one of the things that I love doing is if someone books a show, and then chances are they'll have a similar event the following year. What I like to do is I like to send them something, a month or 2 before that event the following year. How would you handle something like that?
Well, just as our unique message center can have predefined messages that you've created for your systems on the tentative queue as well as the book queue, you can also create a series of messages on completed events. And what we'll do is when you've moved an event, when you've posted payment to the event and you've closed it out, it's now considered completed. You could have a series of messages that are following up with the client we like to do ones that are about 275 days from their event date, which is about 90 days prior to an anniversary date,
Right.
to get them in the mindset. Now, obviously, if it's a birthday party, that will change the time window a little bit, get it closer to the birthday timeline. But for a corporate event or something like that, usually 90 days out puts you in a sweet spot.
So if they do a corporate Christmas party this year, chances are they're going to do a corporate Christmas party next year.
Exactly.
So you can automatically have an email sent 90 days before that party happens.
Yes. And that gets you back top of mind to the client. And we'll send not only 275 out, we might send another one out 400 days after the event, because there may be times where they want to alternate entertainment, and that's fine, but we want to be able to have that touch point. It works great for birthday party markets too, because oftentimes you might get booked for a 3-year-old's party, and now set the reminder coming out several years later, they're getting an email from you that says, hey, remember us at Jake's party?
Yep.
Hey, we're still here and we're just thinking about you. I can't tell you how many times that's created additional revenue, because the parents go, oh yeah, that was so cool. And now Jake has a little brother who's turning 3 now. This would be great. So,
and you really haven't done any additional marketing. I mean, you haven't done anything physical.
Nothing.
To do it. It's already preset.
Nothing has been done on my end to put effort into that, because all the messages look like I hand typed them. So they don't look like a publisher's clearinghouse cookie cutter type thing. They literally are little messages that might say, hey, I was just chuckling about the time we were out at your place, and just look like they were little quick notes that got banged out, and I had the time to think of them. And then, you know what? I get so many people reply back and say, oh, it's so good to hear from you. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah.
If nothing else, you're just keeping the contact going.
And sometimes you probably don't even know that email went out, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. Or I'll get the reply back and I'll go, oh, they must have just gotten an email. They must have just gotten an email. I better look them up. But yeah, that's so cool to have that. And that's when Show Ops really shines, after you've gotten about a year in, and it starts cranking that stuff out automatically for the follow-ups for already booked clients. Because in business, as they say, it's a lot easier to rekindle or get additional business with a warm market than it is doing a cold market.
Absolutely. It's true. It's absolutely true. It's way easier to sell to somebody who's already seen your show than a brand new person who's never seen you before.
Yep. Yeah. It's very little effort at that point.
So it sounds like this is the way to go. So how does somebody get a copy of Show Operations, or what do they do to get a hold of you for that?
You can go to the Show Operations main page. It's showoperations.com. There is where you can find additional information about some of the other features that we haven't covered. Click the sign up button. We do offer a free 30-day trial.
Oh.
And we have 3 different payment plans. So if you want to do it month to month or quarter or yearly, those are options available. But on all of them, you get a 30-day free trial.
Oh, nice.
So we want you to get in, test drive, kick the tires, see if this is something for you. Because ultimately, our goal is to try with Show Operations is to try to make this profitable for you.
Sure.
And when it's a win for you, it's a win for us.
Yeah. And a win for me. Show Operations is something I use all the time.
Yes.
It's perfect.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and you being a former ACT member, ACT user, you know what ACT was all about.
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. And one of the reasons that I changed over to Show Operations is because ACT no longer supported my particular version of ACT. So all of my prior stuff, all my prior data went away. So I ended up exporting all of my data and then importing it into Show Operations, and everything was fine.
Yeah, as I recall, it was something related to the Windows 10 upgrade, and they said, oh, we're not supporting your version of that product on that platform.
That's exactly what it was. And I remember walking into my bedroom one day and seeing my computer upgrading.
Right, on its own.
All by itself, to Windows 10. I'm sure I'm not the only person that's had that happen to them.
Yep.
Well, tell me one of my favorite things to talk about is one of your horror stories. Do you have a horror story about performing and such?
I do.
Oh, tell me.
I think every artist has a horror story. My favorite horror story, and it's a deep lesson to learn, which is, the lesson is know your market. But this is how the story goes. We had never done business with the Chabad group. It's very staunch Jewish sect.
Conservative.
Yeah, very conservative. And they hired us to do a Hanukkah celebration down in the Beverly Hills area.
Yep.
So we got prepared, and I had some bumper music I was going to use for it, and it was beautiful. And my business partner, Debbie Keith, and I were traveling to the venue, and we were just listening to the music going, oh, they're going to just love this. Is so appropriate for this gig. It's just going to be beautiful. We'll open with it, and everyone's going to have a great time. It's lovely. Lighting of the candles kind of song.
Yes.
Right? So we get there, and it's on this street corner, lots of hustle and bustle that's going on, and there are a gazillion people.
Wait, there's a gig on a street corner?
Yes. Yes.
So wait. When they gave you the address, did they say, okay, the corner of?
Yes, they did. And it was like a corner that was not a traditional corner either. It was more of a triangular piece of property. Their lot was where the event was being taken place, and they leased some kind of commercial building for their group. They were using the parking lot to stage their outdoor Hanukkah celebration.
Mm-hmm.
So we get set up, and we got all the gear ready to go. I light up the music, and these women come running up to me, and they're screaming at the top of their head, shut it off! Shut it off! And I think they're saying, turn it up. I'm right next to the speaker. I really can't hear. I know they're reacting, and I'm thinking, oh, they're just digging this. So I crank it louder. And they're waving their hands. They're like flailing their hands. No, turn it off. Turn it off. And so then I'm like going, oh. I quickly fumble with the iPod and hit the stop button mid-song. Everyone in the crowd on that busy street corner stopped what they were doing, stared at us.
Oh, no.
Like Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Uh-huh.
I'm going, I was looking around. I said, well, isn't this the pause that refreshes? There's nothing I could do. I mean, here we are with this giant fumble, right? I'm feeling like, oh, where do we go? Like try to pick up the pieces of that train wreck.
Oh, man.
And we muddled through it, with no music at all from that point. Just doing just the live stuff, no pre-recorded stuff.
Right.
It turns out that in their faith, men cannot hear women singing. Now, the deal is that the music I had was children singing. It wasn't even a woman, but they interpreted that. It was these women that were really worked up, that we were pretty much urinating on their events. It's like, hey, I'm sorry.
I guess that just shows you. I guess you need to know the customs.
Right. That's what I know the client. And that's also when I found out you can't shake the hand of a woman. A man can't shake, and vice versa.
That is true.
We were learning all these social
customs
as we were going. It did have a happy ending. 2 weeks later, the rabbi calls us up, and we're thinking we will never work a Chabad ever again, because they network. They talk to each other, just like library people talk to each other. I thought we were done, and he calls up and says, hey, would you come down and do the preschool? We've got a camp thing going on. When we got there, we confessed. It was like, I thought we would never see you guys or anyone related to the church again. And he was like, well, you're here, aren't you? Oh, so it was like, no big deal. He had a good laugh about it, actually.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it actually turned into another gig.
Oh, yeah.
So your horror story actually turned into a happy story.
Yes, but it was horror in the moment.
Are there any other happy stories that you want to share, that something really cool that happened?
Recently, we sent one of our employees out on a birthday party gig for the Wilson family, is what they were said, and they were really downplaying that element of it. And they were dropping, the woman was dropping hints, Samantha Wilson was dropping hints, and she goes, well, we want to do this drum thing for our son. He loves drums, as did his grandfather. And so they said, yeah, we have kind of a musical background in the family. And so we sent the employee down to do this gig at a restaurant for this birthday party. That, surprise, surprise, it is the Wilson family, as in the Beach Boy Wilson family.
As in?
And it was Dennis Wilson's grandson.
Oh, my.
Yeah. And so the really cool thing was that my employee said he had a great time with it, that they all enjoyed it. And, I take him at his word. But
Sure.
About 3 weeks later, I get this raving review from her. And, it really touched my heart, as it did when I told it to the employee. I could hear him almost choking up, that it just really meant so much to hear from, someone who has the family has musical chops. And it was just such a well-worded review that we were just very happy, and it just amazing. Yeah.
Oh, nice. That should probably go on is that going to go on your website?
Yeah. Well, we put it on our Facebook group, but yeah, it's got to go on the website. We had Mandy DeWolf once with us. We did a party for her, and she's the daughter of the Who's drummer.
Oh.
Yeah, back in the day.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, well, there it is. Who? But
well, there you go. Who exactly? On my Facebook page, The Variety Artist, I tell people who I'm going to be interviewing. And so when I mentioned that I would be interviewing you, I say, if you have any questions for Pete or whoever it is that I'm interviewing, please post them here. Doug Scheer, a school assembly magician out of Michigan, probably one of the best in the country, asked this, and maybe you can answer his question.
Sure.
What is more cost effective, dumping money into SEO or just dumping the same amount of money into Google AdWords?
That's a really good question, actually, and one that everyone struggles with. It's not unique. So I've always looked at AdWords as the temporary crutch to get you while you're working on getting your main page set for organic searching. At one point in time, I was using AdWords and had a monthly budget of a couple $100 a month. I now have no AdWords budget, and I get the same results organically, and it's been that way for years. The long-term investment would be to go organic. The short-term would be to use AdWords as the crutch to get you there just while you're, so you got income coming in and whatnot.
Got you.
Now, with that said, there is a bit of a caveat to this SEO, because I know that there are companies out there that will say, we'll do your SEO, and as long as you pay us a monthly fee, then you're golden, and we're going to get you on page one.
Yeah, I get those emails all the time. Whenever I have a new domain name, I get 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 of those emails.
Right. And that kind of SEO campaign is no better than AdWords. You do not want to do that, because then you're still at the mercy of some third-party agency that's holding the purse strings that you're paying a hostage to, ransom to. So rather than go with that, if you decide you're going to start getting serious about doing your organic stuff, believe me, it's really not that hard getting onto page one, because so many people don't do SEO at all on their pages, especially artists. It's really a very simple process, kind of cookie cutter. That's one of those things where you should find somebody that is going to specialize in customizing your page specific, not putting you as the end point of one of their systems. Yeah. I found what works for me. Let's see if I can give you some examples of page one integration.
So you're looking at Google's first pages?
So if you went to Google and did a search on Southern California school assemblies, you'll find our school-based webpage on page 1 called The Incredible School Assemblies.
Nice.
And if you'll notice that in there, there's nothing about One World Rhythm in the search terms. It's just about school assemblies. And so we're ranking and we're focusing our keywords on school assemblies.
Gotcha. Instead of one world, because one world could mean anything.
Exactly. Okay, so if you go and do a search on Children's Party Entertainment Beverly Hills, you'll find that we come up on page 1. Now, there's something unique here because we're not based in Beverly Hills.
Ah.
What we've done is we've created a unique page for Beverly Hills. Now, this is way different technique than writing a bunch of city names down at the bottom of your homepage. That's not how this works. If you go and you drill into that page, you will notice that Beverly Hills has been woven through the copy, is strategically placed in there along with Children's Party Entertainment.
So the entire page says Children's Party Entertainment in Beverly Hills, the best in town, blah, 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 Beverly Hills, in a natural order, natural sentence.
Exactly. And you can analyze that one to see what we're doing to create the various elements that got us there. So that's a good one to check out.
Those are great. In fact, variety artists that are listening to this, go to Pete's websites, take a look at those, see how he's getting those first rankings. Look at the Beverly Hills one page that he's talking about. Look at the school assembly one that he's talking about. Don't copy it, but you can kind of emulate what he's doing to get on the first pages.
Think outside the box. Notice that the keywords here weren't music. The keyword was Children's Party Entertainment. But that could very easily be reworked to children's birthday entertainment or children's birthday party entertainment. Those are all different things.
I suggest that when a birthday mom or a library or a school is looking for entertainment, they aren't necessarily looking for a magician or a juggler or a musical act.
Right.
They're looking for children's entertainment. So
Right.
the smarter idea would be, say, to use the words children's entertainment as your key words, as opposed to magician, juggler, musical act, etc.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, what's one, I know my variety artists are going to go and they're going to look at all that. What's one good piece of advice for the beginner, the guy that's just starting out?
The guy that's just starting out, well, definitely get your web presence in place. Make sure you have a decent URL, that domain name that you have secured. I know artists, as we speak, that I've known for years that still don't have their own web page.
Well, I've noticed one of the big mistakes that I think people make is they'll use their name as their URL.
Yeah.
JohnAbrams.com. Nobody's looking for JohnAbrams.com. They're looking for children's entertainment or library entertainment or something like that.
Right. And you may have to get a little creative with it because a lot of domains have been already taken. But there's still finds that are out there, and they are kind of like virtual real estate. Once you got those in place, they only grow in value, especially as you begin to have more traffic hit them, they become more valuable.
So what do you suggest as a URL? For example, maybe your location or what you do, or what do you suggest?
That's a good question. I would not necessarily want to be locked into a city, for example, in particular, because you may want to have most of us variety entertainers usually won't travel much beyond 50 or 75 miles from our house, depending on how well the gig is paying. That's a bigger stretch. And not just that. Do you really want to market to a client that's 75 miles away? Are they going to be able to pony up the money enough to make it worth your while?
Yeah, especially in LA with LA traffic. We don't talk by miles, we talk by minutes and hours, right?
Right. Get the domain name happening. Make sure that at least you've got a decent presence so somebody can hit a website you can refer them to. That ultimately should be funneling to a CRM of some sort, not just dropping you an email, so that you can leverage that down the road. That would be the good first start.
And how about the working pro, the guy that's been doing it for a long time? Do you have any advice for them?
Well, for the working pro, I realized that we get into our systems that we've developed and we are terrified of making change, because the last thing we want to have happen is to have all of our operations fumble on us and then all of a sudden we're lost and starting over from scratch. And it doesn't really have to be that way. A good tip for a pro, especially one who has not used an automated system, is to make sure you're looking for a system that can grow with you. Start simple. Start converting your stuff over into a database, for example. And then as you start getting comfortable with the program, then start turning on its other capabilities. Doesn't have to be an all or nothing.
So that's a great advice for the working pro. That's great advice for everybody, actually. All right, now give us one book recommendation and tell us why.
Well, I think anybody that's been in business for a while will tell you that one of the go-tos is Think and Grow Rich.
Oh, one of my favorite books. I've read it 2 or 3 times.
Yep, that is like a must read if you haven't read that, and I'm assuming many of us have, but that's one. Certainly The Science of Getting Rich is a good one. And by the way, on the Think and Grow Rich, I was really happy to be part of a crowdfunding project that got that turned into a movie that is super gorgeous. It's well worth watching.
Think and Grow Rich is one of my very favorites. Everybody should read that at least once. I read it every 3 or 4 years, whether I want to or not. Yes. Well, thank you, Pete, for sharing all this great knowledge. You have been a wonderful, wonderful, amazing guest. For you variety artists out there, make sure to check out our show notes for Pete's interview at www.thevarietyartist.com. You'll see timestamps and references for everything Pete has talked about. Thanks again for doing my podcast.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me. Best of luck to Variety Podcast.
Thank you so much.
That's all for this episode of The Variety Artist, but your journey continues on our website. Go to thevarietyartist.com for more strategies, insight, and resources, as well as show notes on today's guest to assist you in your career. We'll see you on the next episode of The Variety Artist. But until then, go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.